And three, two, one. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Lo-Fi Horror Guy. Welcome to another Lo-Fi Horror Guys Growing on You Live. Today, I'm going to be having on Dirk Verbeuren, the dude, the beast, an absolute machine on the drums. My man is the drummer for Megadeth. He is part of Blood from the Soul, Cadaver, Brave the Cold, Bensi. Dude has so much shit going on. I can't even comprehend half the time how he even does it. But he does it, and he does it so well. He absolutely kills it. So this is going to be such a sick experience here. I cannot wait to have him on the show here. We're going to be talking, just personal interests, how he got into drums, his playing, his technique, his drums, of course, his projects that he's been a part of, or that he is currently part of, just all the different things that he's been on. We're going to be digging into tonight here. And let me get him connected. And
How's it going? Can you hear me?
I've been so excited for this, man. So we're gonna dig right into it.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
No worry.
Oh.
Nice.
Sorry about that.
So here on Growing on You Live, I have a
I'm
couple
ready,
of
but my phone isn't.
just fun questions at first. The remainder of the interview is about you and your incredible career, your craft, your drumming, and then I have one finale that I wrote just for you, man. So we're gonna dig right in. If you're all comfy and we got everything all set, for a local restaurant, somewhere that is just a favorite of your wife and yourselves, where would you tell us to go?
Well, there is a great, we're in LA in the Valley and San Fernando Valley, basically, Sherman Oaks, North Hollywood area, and there's a great restaurant here, which is nearby all the studios and stuff. A traditional Mexican place called Don Cuco's. Absolutely amazing. It's been around forever. It's just a great place. So, I used to be vegetarian for many years, my wife as well, and more recently, in the past years, I've trended more towards the vegan thing, so there's not that much more I can eat on the menu there anymore. There's still a few things. It's mostly just traditional Mexican, so,
still
chicken
solid,
and beef and all that stuff, but I just know that everything there, is great. And
if you could create a dream band, okay, so you already have Blood from the Soul, you work with just amazing people already, but if you had a dream band that you could create with 4 other members, who would be in your dream band?
Oh man, yeah, like you said, I've been really fortunate in working with many people that I grew up listening to, people that I've looked up to over the years, so I'm already in a ton of my dream bands, to be honest, or have worked in dream projects with people. They're not all like full-time bands and stuff, but there are still some people that I've never done anything with Justin Broderick from Godflesh, who's a huge influence of mine, a guy I look up to tremendously, so I would love to do something with him one day. Same thing with James Plotkin from formerly OLD, who was also in Kamate and many other projects. He's also one of those guys that just has his own sound. Justin and James both, they have they just have a musical universe of their own that they've built out that's really wide, and I love that. So I think, since one of the first people I grew up really admiring as a kid was Prince, who was in a way similar, played like all these different instruments, wrote all kinds of different things. So I think I've always been sort of attracted to, or interested in people that can not only do just one thing, but can do all these different things. And Shane Embry, obviously, with whom I work in several projects.
Before metal, what were some favorite songs or albums that, really stuck out to you?
I have this memory of Do the Locomotion being a song that when I was a tiny little kid I was into, and my parents always had the radio on. Like, they were both huge into music. My mom more into classical, but she also liked some of the stuff on the radio. My dad was more like a rock and roll guy, grew up listening to the Beatles and the Stones.
Nice.
Led Zeppelin, all kinds of different things, the Who, the Kinks, and actually Lola by the Kinks, that was another big one. As a kid, once I called into a local radio station in Belgium. I was probably, 6 years old, 5 years old, and I called in to request that song. And so the DJ had me on, and like, hey, so, why do you like this song stuff? I had no idea what it was about.
And especially,
when I found out later, that was super funny, but it's just a great song.
For sure. It's awesome. Even still today, Beautiful. Where, where and when did metal come into, as far as introductory bands or songs, in that genre?
Well, I mean, it was mostly stuff at the time that I heard on the radio because I'm talking, at the time I was a kid living in Belgium. I was probably about 10 or 11 years old around the time when I really started, listening to like the weekly top 30. It was like a Saturday, like, late morning, early afternoon. They played like the biggest stuff at the time in Belgium. And so stuff like Wasted Years would come on and some stuff like Final Countdown by Europe. So I actually got that on cassette. Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, so that was like my first kind of forays into very commercial, metal or very like popular, at least I would say, but just like my first, stuff where there was really guitar. And then I got to mention an album that was really huge for me and that really changed my life was License to Ill from the Beastie Boys. And that has Kerry King famously, on No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which was one of those songs where they have the heavy guitars and kind of that metal attitude. And that was actually a gateway for me because through the Beastie Boys, I then got into like Run DMC, Public Enemy, like kind of more, LL Cool J, like the early stuff, NWA, kind of heavier stuff in a way, which then translated, not long after that to like, thrash metal, and obviously Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer, all those bands, Suicidal.
They've kind of oddly fallen into that category of just being a really nasty, even though they were a hip hop group, they still had that attitude with it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I just love the fact that they were so like balls to the wall with everything they did. Like the vocals were just so intense, you could tell they were just yelling and screaming.
Outside of those genres, what are some of your drum inspirations? May it be rock and roll bands, maybe even a little country, who knows?
Well, I mean, as I told you, Prince was a big influence. So, and he also played drums, on a lot of his records. So, so that was obviously, I followed a lot of what he did throughout his career, and he inspired me in many ways, songwriting, but also just the craft of performing and writing the instruments the way he did was just, one of a kind. And then, outside of purely strictly metal.
Yes.
There's a couple of guys that were really a big influence to me was Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was really into them around like midpoint era, like Mother's Milk, Blood Sugar, Sex Magic, those albums, where they were just incredible grooves, and I tried to like emulate some of those songs on the drums back when I first started. Another one was Tim Herb Alexander from Primus. I discovered them with the Sailing the Seas of Cheese album that I think a friend of mine had, and just loved that record. And again, a guy with tons of groove and funk influences and like fusion influences. And then, another one actually that I really want to mention here is Sean Reinert, who was actually yesterday was the anniversary of his passing last year. And he became a friend of me and my wife's, some years ago here, but way back when I was a kid. Sean was basically a jazz fusion drummer. Even though he played in Cynic and they were doing metal and stuff, his love was always with, things like King Crimson and, Dave Weckl famously, Vinnie Colaiuta, those are some of his favorite drummers. And so even though he played in metal bands, his heart was always in those styles. And he really brought that language along in the way he played drums on like Human by Death, all the Cynic albums. At the time there was just Focus by Cynic, but so in my early years, Sean was really a huge influence that I would say came kind of outside of metal. He really opened up my understanding of like all the things you could do outside of just playing fast, playing heavy, playing busy. He had all these really cool, dynamics, and he used like splash cymbals and just a completely different approach that at the time was revolutionary, I think, for not just for me, but for many. And so that had a huge impact on me. His playing, to this day, is something that I refer to as
so beautiful
some of the best
about
stuff
music
that's
in
ever been
general is
done.
with Sean, passing, now for a year. You look at just all of the stuff that he had left behind and all the music that there still is. It's like even though he's not physically here anymore, his spirit and body, it's a beautiful thing to still be able to have that and still be able to introduce it to new people out there, even to be fans as well.
Yeah, it's one of the wonderful things about art is that it lives on beyond the artist and the creator. And so, you know, the fact that it still touches people to this day, like something that's in a way bygone, you know, is amazing, because
Yeah.
when you have such a musical expression, such a talent like Sean is, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
something that
absolutely.
it's kind of timeless in a way
Digging
for me,
into,
you know.
you
I view it
first
as
getting
kind
into
of,
drums,
you know,
I've heard
something
different
immortal in a
stories,
way.
as far as you playing with some rulers and sticks and boxes and whatnot. Kind of, tell us a little bit about how you initially got into the interest of playing.
Well, it's funny because I was always tapping on stuff and, you know, my desk and whatnot, you know, and my dad
Yeah.
was kind of like, you know, taking note. At the time, I got to tell you, my first instrument was violin. I started playing that when I was really
Hmm.
young. Did that for some years, didn't really fully get into it. I mean, I did it, you know, but it wasn't really my thing. Did a little bit of piano, took some lessons there, a little bit of guitar. My dad always had guitars laying around, so he would show me some things and I would pick the guitar here and there, but I was always tapping on stuff, right? And so I had a buddy in Belgium that I grew up with, and he would come hang out. And at the time, I was really getting into like super heavy stuff like Napalm Death, you know, first couple albums. And what we do is we just take those and play along, you know, and we'd actually put them on 45 RPM so they'd even be faster. And my buddy would like scream over them, and I would just, you know, have these wooden rulers laying around, so I just hit whatever was around, cardboard boxes, you know. Had these big Tupperware boxes that you put toys in. I would just like build a makeshift drum kit and just play blast beats like a maniac until my hands were all blistered up from the rulers, you know. So it was just kids being
Yeah,
silly, you
yeah,
know. But we really just loved the energy, you know. We'd do that for an hour, and then we'd go skateboard
for
and
sure.
whatnot, you know. And so it was just kind of like very innocent and very, you know, not ambitious, just having fun. But then eventually my dad was like, "Hey, you know, there's a distant cousin of yours who's selling a little jazz kit that he's not using. He used to be a drummer, but he's older now. He doesn't really play. He's selling it. Would you be interested if I got it for you?" And you know, I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" You know, and before I knew it, like, you know, I had a little kit in the house, and I was drumming like every day, 3, 4, 5 hours. You know, I'd come home from school, straight upstairs to
Nice.
the drum
And
kit,
I
and
did want to mention, especially, was that something that was kind of pressed on upon school? With it seems like 6 years old. That's a pretty advanced instrument.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a school thing, and so, you know, my school had this program where you could pick a bunch of different instruments. We also all had a mandatory basically a music theory lesson every week. This really nice teacher, I remember her really well, and we would sing and learn about, you know, like the notes and all that stuff. And you could pick an instrument to do also. And I always thought, oh, my parents probably, you know, since they were both really into classical music, they probably kind of told me, hey, maybe you should
Oh,
try, you know.
wow.
But according to them later on, when I asked them, like, how did this happen? They're like, no, no, you really wanted to play violin. And my aunt, one of my mom's sisters, had a
Oh,
violin.
wow.
She used to play it and didn't play it anymore. So she's like, hey, I can send you the violin.
Yeah, like, golly, 6 years old is that's pretty young for a violin. Shit.
It's a really difficult instrument. I think one of the reasons I struggled a little bit with it over the years was because of that, you know, because it's really like just even the position like that you have to be in to play and to hold that when you're playing and
Right.
practicing and stuff. It's like tiring, especially for a kid. After 15 minutes, you're like, you know, you just want to go do something else. But it's you know, in a way, it's
Okay.
great because I
Okay.
think it really helped
Yeah, for
develop
sure.
my
How long
ear
did you play?
and give me some initial training that I benefit from to this day. So I'm glad I did it.
Oh, wow. After learning some of the basics in drumming, what were some aspects that you really wanted to go back and kind of fine tune on, as far as maybe even like volume, stick handling? What were some things that you worked on early on?
Well, I mean, the early years, I really didn't know what I was doing. I would just play along to stuff, you know, whatever I liked at the time.
Yeah.
Name any, you know, metal band, thrash, death metal, grindcore, you know, I probably played along to it at some point. At the same time, also like more, you know, radio stuff, like the stuff I mentioned, Red Hot Chili Peppers, etc. And I'd have buddies come over who played guitar, and we'd jam, and you know, just put a tape in the boombox and record ourselves and laugh, you know, and just have fun. And but what I found was that, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
and also I want to mention this too. My dad sometimes would show me stuff like he'd be like, "Hey, check out Led Zeppelin. Hey, check out Dave Brubeck quartet. You know, take five. Like that's a thing in five instead of four." So I'd sit with the headphones and try and figure it out. So my dad was always
Yeah.
really
Wow.
like, you know, feeding me little things here and there that really ended up, you know, being important to me. So props to him for that. You know, and but after a few years of doing that, you know, I came out of high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my parents were like, what do you really want to do? You know, I was kind of going for science. My dad was a researcher, so I kind of had in mind, I guess I'll do that, you know, but I wasn't really that into it. So I told them, I'm like, oh, what I really like is music. So they sent me off to this school, and at the time I lived in France, so they sent me to a school in France, which is kind of like the MI here in LA, kind of that same model. And so at the time, I really felt stuck with what I could do. Like I could do a certain number of things. I could play, thrash beats and blast beats and this and that and fast fills, but that was pretty much it. Other than that, I didn't really know how to move beyond that, right? So the biggest thing I learned in school, bar none, was really like dynamics. Like I had no idea about accents and, just instead of playing everything loud and everything the same way, just bringing in nuances and color, and I got that from several teachers in the school. Like I got that from following jazz. I got that from just snare technique exercises. I had some really awesome teachers and from different kinds of music, you just learn a lot, it enriches, even if you do a certain thing. Like I've always been kind of a metal drummer, I guess, but you pick things from, rock music, from fusion, from jazz, from classical, I did like some Latin music, Afro-Cuban beats and, Brazilian stuff. And so you pick up a little bit of things, even though, I couldn't join a jazz trio tomorrow. I'm not good enough for that, but I practiced some of the techniques and some of the ideas and the concepts behind it. And that really like blew the lid off of, my drumming world, if you will, because all of a sudden I felt like, man, instead of being stuck, I felt like there's way too many things for a lifetime to learn,
Tell us about how the Dirk Beat came about. Where were you, mindset? Were you just practicing and kind of fell upon trying to make some things a little bit easier? How did that come about?
Well, it came from a teacher who told me, like, here's the thing, he said, if you want to really learn to integrate something into your playing, go basically from the exercise to the drumming, which was always kind of a tough bridge to gap. He said, take the idea, take the rudiment or whatever. In this case, it was like a flam accent, a triplet rudiment with a flam. He said, just play it all over the kit, just take it and play it, mess around with it, play it on your cymbals, play it on your toms, switch it around, try different things, just experiment with it for like a half hour. He said, and before you know it, you'll start being like, oh, I could use it like this, I could use it like that. Oh, this doesn't really work, but oh, this works. He's like, basically just, don't play it just on the snare like how it's intended to be. That was the whole concept, and you could apply that to many different things, but with that in particular, with the flam accent, I was just messing around, moving the accent around, and at one point I moved it like to the hat and to the crashes, and I was like, oh, if I keep the other beats on the snare, it sounds kind of like a blast beat, like ta 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 with an accent every three, right? And so I was like, if I just put double kicks underneath, that do like ta 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 ta, basically follow the same thing, all of a sudden you have this weird blast beat. And so I started using that in my band at the time, Scarve. We had a song where there was a passage in 3 where that kind of fit. So I was like, okay. So I started playing it. And, I never really thought about it. I was just like, yeah, it's just a thing that I do, whatever, Fast forward many years, people start playing faster and faster. And sometimes I would have like session songs where I had to play like super fast, like Cybreed comes to mind. There's the song on the Cybreed album Antares that I did called Dynamic, which is like 280 BPM, which back in 2006 was like 280 BPM was like, that's not human. I can't play blast beats like that, So I was like, oh, but if I do it this way, with the Dirk Blast, I can actually make it work. Yeah. And then people started noticing and telling me like, what's that thing you do? And, so it kind of became a thing from there.
I remember
but it was really just
things like,
just my teacher telling me, try this, here's an idea.
Seeing it on YouTube and seeing you like explaining it. I'm like, how in the hell did this come about? Like, this is absolutely wild. Holy shit. But that is awesome. That's great. I love it.
I mean, when you look at drums, what's interesting is that it's really mathematical in a way. You always have a number of beats within, a certain, like in a bar or whatever, you have this many beats, and then this hand plays that many beats, and that hand plays this. And if you start thinking about it in a mathematical way and looking at it like, if I put this here, or if I put that there, or if I move this to this symbol or whatever, it's a very practical thing, So you start thinking about it in a certain way, and it really, like I said, it blows the lid off of what you can do, because all these options open up, and it's limitless in the end. You can just be creative. And I always tell my drum students, I have quite a few drum students that I try to help out every week, and I always tell them, like, give yourself time to be creative, to just play Don't think about anything. Use some of the ideas that you've worked on or some of your own ideas and try and mess around with them and see what happens.
Yep. A lot of drums is math too. So that's a little bit of what gives me a headache sometimes with drums, but it helps. Yeah. That's.
Yeah, when you're going into like Meshuggah territory, it could be some complicated math. Like
that'd be funny.
There's probably there's some probabilities in there and some
like math problems.
I don't know. Some crazy shit.
Oh my God. Yeah. They'd probably lose some fans. They're like, man, I can't follow this anymore.
Square roots, all kinds of stuff in there.
Oh my God. All right. So tell us about your pre-show ritual. So you're going out for a concert. You're going to be out there for an hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half. What are you doing before the show, to get yourself ready for time, that you're going to be out there?
Well, always warm up, of course, because, I in the past when I was younger, I made the mistake a few times not to do that and got hurt a few times, like messed up my shoulder and just, stupid stuff just because I thought I didn't need to warm up, I was like, I play all week, I'm good, and then before you know it, you hurt yourself. So I always stretch, I have kind of a stretch regimen that I go through, which actually Mike Heller from Fear Factory and Raven and a bunch of other bands, I was on tour with him and he showed me a bunch of really cool, like just yoga stretches and he kind of had a routine. So I did it with him like every night while we were on tour and just really kept doing that and expanding on it, adding things. My wife works out a lot too, so she'll show me like, hey, you can try this stretch, So I'll start with that. And then I also just do a lot of, warming up with rudiment, single strokes, double strokes, whatever, like whatever I can get my hands on. Sometimes it's just a pad. With Megadeth, it's a bit more luxurious when we do our own tours. I usually have a small little electronic kit with me so I can actually sit and, we can run through songs together. Like the guys will have a little amp set up and we can do a little bit of a pre-show warm-up together. But I'm always making sure just that everything is loose, that I'm ready, that I don't go on stage like cold, because that's the worst thing. And also another thing, I don't eat before playing. Like if dinner is anywhere between like 2.5 hours or earlier to the show, I'm like, I'll eat after, because if I'm digesting, I suck at drumming.
Do you do anything, drinking water at all? Do you do that, or do you kind of keep away from that as well?
So that's a really important thing for me.
Having to pee.
Yeah, I mean, I stay hydrated, pretty decent throughout the day. I do my best, but usually, like, I play better if I'm hungry. I think it's that sometimes in my mind I compare it probably to like the caveman era, and guys were like, when it's time to catch the mammoth, and they're really getting hungry, they got tons of energy. So for me, that's kind of like
with a band like Cadaver. Like, boy, if I just play this a little bit faster, it'll get done, and I can have that nice meal afterward. But the specifics with your drums, your cymbals, sticks, all that, just kind of your go-tos for when you're jumping up and going out on tour. First off, I wanted to dig into your drums, which you're endorsed by Tama, correct?
Yeah, I've actually worked with them for a really, really long time, because the school I was in, the one I mentioned that I went to after high school, so this is like mid-90s, they had basically a deal with Tama. One of the teachers there who was frequently there was also working at the French distributor for Tama. So I had a deal. They had Tama kits in the school, so whenever we'd play on something, it'd be that. When I came out of the school, I quickly became actually a teacher in the school. They had a place open, and they're like, hey, do you want to try this? I'm like, sure. And so that teacher said, I can help you out and give you like a small endorsement deal. I really believe in you. I think you'll go places. I guess he had a vision, because at the time I had no idea what I was doing. But so he helped me getting like like a half price on a pedal or something. So I got like a new double pedal at the time. And then from there, slowly over the years, as I started doing more stuff, it evolved into where it is now, which is a full endorsement. Tama are an awesome company. I mean, obviously some of the best drums in the world, but also just really good at, the artist relations. Like here in LA, where, they have one of their offices. I've been there a bunch of times to go test stuff. Like, for example, when they developed the new pedal now, the Dynasync, which is their first direct drive pedal, me and also a bunch of other, local drummers and even drummers across the country, but mostly local guys, we went in there a bunch of times and tested like different prototypes, and they'll come, and write down all the feedback and all the notes that we have to make sure that in the end the product is that it's up to par, and that the people are actually going to be playing it. enjoy it. So that's how serious they take it. They're super
that's
perfectionist
awesome.
about
Is
their
that
stuff.
something that's available now?
Love Tama. You know,
the
it's
pedal that you
just,
talked
I
about?
couldn't think of a better brand of drums to play. Yeah, I think it came out early last year or late 2019. I can't remember, but yeah, it's been available
Yeah.
and it's really great. I never played a direct drive pedal in my life. You know, I mean, I tried people's pedals, but I've always been a chain drive guy. And this pedal is great because you can kind of go from the chain drive feeling, and then you have some settings that you can go all the way to like full on direct drive, or pretty much anywhere in between. So I think you know everybody can find a sweet spot, and
That's sweet.
it's
All right,
really
next,
helped me improve
let's talk
my
your
my speed and
symbols,
my
your
control. I
Milo,
have to
you know,
say,
as
so
far as
I love it.
what are some of the series that you have, sizes and all that?
Well, you know, recently I've been using a lot of the Classics Custom Dark, which are kind of a newer series. I used to be an MB20 guy, but they discontinued that. They still have some of those under a new name now, which I still use, like the Ride, which is now called Bison's Brilliant. But, you know, they have a lot of great stuff. I have a whole bunch of different symbols that I've kind of collected from them over the years that I can use in different, you know, situations. Okay. Like, for example, tomorrow I have a session here locally in LA in a studio with like more of an alternative artist. Got to record a couple of songs for her. And so I'm going to just bring a batch of symbols so that, you know, hey, what do you think, this sound or that sound, you know? And that's kind of like, as a studio guy, that's something that's good to have. And Meinl are a great company too, man. Super supportive as well from day one. You know, I've been with them since 2005. And I had a chance actually, you know, to visit their factory in Germany, which was a really amazing experience. It's a full-on 100% green factory, so everything they use gets recycled or reused. You know, they basically have zero waste. And they're one of those companies that decided to not outsource anything. I mean, they have some symbols, like their really high-end symbols get made in Turkey by, you know, the guys that are real pros at hand hammering and listening and, you know, just the best in the world. But a lot of their other stuff gets made in Germany, and they decided not to go to China, you know. Just like every company, they had the opportunity to go to China and do it there, and they decided, you know what, we want to stay, we want to keep German people employed, we want to be a German company 100%. So, and I respect that, you know, that's the kind of attitude where I'm like, more people should do that, because, you know, nothing against China and nothing against things that are made there. You know, I know that we all have a ton of stuff like that, but when a company can do what they're doing, it's you know, I applaud that.
You know, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and they sound great. You know, I mean, that's a small.
So and great symbols, you know, that's also very important.
Right. Now your sticks. What size? You know, what brand do you stick with on?
By the way,
on your sticks there?
So I use Tama sticks actually, and I've used them for, you know, as long as I can remember. And they're made of oak, and they're really, really durable. They're 2Bs, and I've had a signature model for some years now. I first started having that when I was still in Soilwork, but you know, again, it was one of those things where I tried a bunch of different brands, and I would always break my sticks. And you know, when you're, as most people know, when you have to pay for them, you know, and you keep breaking them, it sucks, because they're like. You know, you keep playing them until they're all worn out and they don't really sound good anymore. And I was always like, God damn it. And then one day I tried the Tamas, and I'm like, man, these things they're super durable, you know, they're super thick, they're heavy. Like, I like that. So, you know, I asked them, you know, over the years with the endorsement, it would be so cool. I asked them for many years to do a signature stick. And eventually they're like, all right, fine, you know. And now they're actually, you know, distributing it more throughout, you know, throughout different countries. At the time, it was kind of like they just sent
awesome.
it to me,
and
you know, didn't really sell them. But now they're expanding on that. So, you know, great sticks, great stuff. They're 2B, so, you know, on the longer end and on the heavier end. But for me, it's just what I'm used to. You know, at this point, when I play anything lighter than that, it feels like there's nothing there. So.
Props to you, sir. There's a reason you are who you are.
Thanks. I mean, you know, it's you know, sometimes I thought maybe they're a bit too heavy for some of the really fast stuff that I do, but then again, you know, I like to take on that challenge, and I've been working a lot on my technique in the past years, you know, to try and be more, you know, just have a better hand technique, better grip, you know, use my fingers more, just build the endurance. And it's a life's work, like I said earlier.
Nice.
You know,
Nice.
I'll be 90, you know, if my body allows, I'll still be practicing blast beats.
What are you using and what do you prefer?
So recently it's been the Tama Dynasync, you know, direct drive pedals. Before that, I was a Iron Cobra guy and then a Speed Cobra guy when they came out with the Speed Cobras. So yeah, Tama, again, you know, it's their hardware for me is top notch. I like the fact that, you know, they really listen to the artists and really take our input to heart and use that to develop newer products like Dynasync, for example. You know, to me, that's really a great thing. And I mean, you know, I'm not dissing any companies like, you know, I know Sarzi Copito, for example, is really famous with the you know, yeah, the direct drive pedals, and a lot of drummers that I know love those pedals, and I'm sure they're awesome, you know. And I don't diss that. For me, it's just I've always had a really good relationship with Tama. I see no reason to really go anywhere else. And they're always super helpful. Also, being a big international company, it's great when, you know, for example, now even with Megadeth, you know, a lot of times we can ship our own stuff, but sometimes we can't. Like a couple of years ago, we played in the Philippines, you know, where it was just like, okay, we can't ship all our stuff there for one show. We had to ship it like to the next show in Singapore or whatever. So I had to use a local kit. So Tama set something up, you know, and that's like, that's the advantage you have when with a company like that, where you go play like in the, you know, four corners of the world. Sometimes, you know, I've had the same thing happen in places like Russia and Australia, where it's like you really need that help, you know, and so that's cool because at least you're playing something that you know is familiar.
You have the gloves. And that would first off, where did that come from? Where did that start? And what do you feel as far as your advantage from not playing with them as opposed to playing with them?
Well, it started really dumb. It started with me having to cancel the Soilwork show because my hands were so beat up that during sound check in the afternoon, I was like, I can't play. You know, I had so many blisters. Yeah, my hands were it was bad. Like I had like blisters on, you know, 3 fingers on every hand. I was just completely beat up. And I was like, and I was trying to play and I was like, guys, like I can't, you know, I just can't. My sticks are falling out of my hands. Like I'm not going to be able to play a show tonight. So we literally had to like cancel the show because of me. The opening band, Hatesphere, good friends of ours, they like basically headlined the gig. And then we went on stage, put some tables, sat down and signed people's shit, you know, and I was like, and this was all because of me not being able to pull it off that day. So I'd been through the pain for a bunch of times, you know, and I was like, I got to do something. This is not working. So that's when I started like, okay, I'm getting gloves. And in the beginning, it sucked. You know, the first few months, it sucked because it's like so different. You know, you really have to get used to just the grip being different. It's more slippery. Nowadays, I even use tape as well, you know, so I use gloves and tape because it, you know, you just lose the sticks less easily. But I don't know if it was just because I had like poor grip or what, you know. I mean, initially I'm a self-taught drummer, so who knows what the reason is, or just my skin is, you know, a little bit more sensitive than some people. I see guys who like hit super hard and they don't use gloves and they don't even have the slightest, you know, I get like blisters and all kinds of shit. So, but yeah, that's where it comes from. And so I got used to it. You know, I use the Tama drummer's gloves, and they're great. You know, they've developed them over the years too. Like the first model was good, but this new one they have now is really, really good.
Nice.
It works really good for me, and you know, it allows me. I mean, my hands are like
your hands being all beat up. You didn't even get to sign signatures then, huh? They're like, hey, this isn't Dirk. Who is this asshole that just
like they were probably all fucked up, like, you know. Like...
Oh my god, that is funny. Dear Lord.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. As a drummer myself, footwear is very key as far as, you know, with not fumbling around on your pedals. What do you prefer, you know, playing when you shoe wise?
Well, I use the Vreiten shoes. My buddy Joke, who plays in Amon Amarth, hooked me up with them, and I used another company for a long time, but they stopped producing. So he said, "Man, you got to try these Vreiten ones. They're really good." So I've been using those, and they're super killer. They're really comfortable. They're light, you know. They're like kind of a mesh texture, so it's really breathable, and that's important, you know, for when you play, like you said, an hour 30, an hour 45-minute shows. Sometimes in hot environments, it's nice to have something that doesn't suffocate your feet. So I really like those, you know. I want to mention Evans drum heads too, because we didn't talk about the head. So I've been, you know, working with Evans for a long time, and they're great too. I use, usually in the studio, I'll use like thinner one-ply heads or, you know, stuff like G1, G2, but live I use the EC2s on the toms. Snare is usually ST Dry or ACD Dry, which is a really nice durable head with nice resonance, and on the kicks I use the EQ3s.
And for your toms,
you know, Evans and Tama is a really good combo. I think they work really well together. Yeah, I'll use coated occasionally in certain situations. Like I remember we did a couple of acoustic shows with Megadeth back in 2016 around the holidays, and then I used coated because it's nice, you know. But when I play full-on metal, it's always clear.
Typically I guess I would say, just say like with Megadeth, is your setup, in the studio what it would be live? Is it pretty close to, what you have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same. I recorded actually for the new Megadeth album in the spring last year, and so we just took one of the live kits, set it up in the studio, so it was exactly the same, and I think that's good because knowing that, it's all gonna go live, it's going to sound the same. I'm going to be able to play the same patterns, It's a little bit of a different kit than I used to play before. Megadeth, I don't use any splash cymbals because there's no use for them. I use more crashes, more toms, less of all the effects and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a different kit than I used to play with Soilwork. I still have the kit I had with Soilwork here in my studio here at home. So I still use that for recordings and, and I want to use splashes and things like that. So it's kind of two different setups. But I also play a lot on electronic drums as well. Because here in my home studio, I do a lot of recordings just using the Roland TD50 and Toontrack Superior drummer samples. So that's like my go-to kit for when I do, recordings for people. Sometimes I'll be able to do it on acoustic, but that's usually a bit more expensive for underground bands and stuff. Yeah. I mean, now Roland started developing like a kit that's actually, I think they I don't know if they released it last year or what, but I saw some stuff about it where it's like a full-looking acoustic kit, but it's actually all, electronic. And to be honest with you, that stuff has really come a long way. I started working with electronic drums in the mid-2000s. That's when I got like a second-hand Roland kit. Used that for some recordings and for practice and stuff because I lived in a place where I just couldn't have an acoustic kit, so that was a good remedy. And even since then, especially with like Toontrack, the samples they have, it's just like sometimes I'll send people stuff and did you record that in your studio in North Hollywood? And I'm like, no, it's recorded at home on the E-drums, and they're like, I couldn't even tell that with E-drums, So that's how far it's come, where it's like it's so realistic now, and of course I've learned to use it too and really optimize my settings so that it's like it responds to how I play. But yeah, it's I view it a little bit as a different instrument, like acoustic kit, it reacts differently. The electronic kit, you play it a little bit differently, but in the end, like as long as you can get the result you want, it's what matters. And for me, it's really helpful to be able to work with both of those setups. Of course, acoustic kit, you can never replace the feeling of playing real drums and just the whole physical aspect of it. It's a little bit toned down usually with an electronic kit, but
it doesn't replace an acoustic kit. But yeah, they're an awesome thing to have on hand, to be able to play. And even in the middle of the night, you're not causing a ruckus and waking up all the kids and the dogs barking and shit.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. It's like it's a great tool to have, and I advise to anybody who can, who has access to that, to try it out, because it's really like it's come such a long way, and it's so easy to just. Like Superior Drummer, you have drop-down menus for anything. You're like, oh, I want a different snare. I want a Ludwig Black Beauty instead of this Tama Warlord. You just click, boom, it loads the samples. Oh, there's the Black Beauty. Oh, what about if I try an Acrolite? It's like everything's just right there. Instead of like changing the snare and moving the mic, it's like it takes 2 seconds, and then you just record yourself, and it's all right there, and it's meaty, so it's like really easy to deal with.
So before all the technology that we have nowadays, I want to ask you about the days back when you had to go into the store and you didn't have iTunes and different things. You basically had to pick up a record and look at the cover and be like, maybe this will be sweet, or maybe it'll suck, but I'm gonna try it out. So you've told the story before where you picked up Peace Sells, kind of off of the cover art. What are 3 other albums that you still love today that you just chose basically off of the cover art that you still love?
Man, yeah, I love those days, man, because it was like a wild bet. You didn't really know. Sometimes you'd buy a thing and you'd be like, I got to return this thing, And actually, one of the records I'm going to mention was like that, because it was the first Napalm Death album, Scum, And I actually bought it. I liked the cover, but it had a little sticker on it, those little like hype stickers, and it said "World's Fastest Band," Like I can't remember what they call it at the time. It was like extreme thrashcore or something. This was before grindcore was like a coined term, like 87, 88, whatever. And so I was like, world's fastest band, I gotta have that, and I bought it, and I go home and, spent like my hard-earned money at the time, on this LP and like $10, whatever, and come home and listen to it, and I'm like, what is this noise, like, this is too much, I don't get this, this isn't music, and I remember telling my dad, like, hey, Dad, I think I bought this record, I think I gotta take it back to the store, But anyway, luckily I stuck with
Of
it.
course.
You know, the next day I was like, I
Yeah.
gotta try to listen to this again. And now it's like one of my favorite albums of all time and one of the most influential for me, of course, you know. So it's typical, you know. But that's one of the things, you know, that comes with that whole
Hmm.
era where now it's like you can listen to everything and you know, oh, I don't like this, I don't
Yeah.
like that, whatever. What comes unfortunately with that for me is that sometimes things don't get a real chance, you know. Some stuff, some of the best albums, some of my favorite records
Oh,
ever were
yes.
records that had to
Yes.
grow on me. Like another one is like the second Bungle album, Mr. Bungle, you know, Disco Volante, which I also kind of bought blindly. I'd heard of the band, but I didn't really know them, you know, and I was like, I heard of this
Hmm.
band. I heard this is some crazy stuff. I love the cover with, you know, with the crazy cover where he's holding the sardine or whatever. And I was like, okay, I gotta buy this, you know, and I bought it. And the same thing at first, it was like, what is this thing? You know, what did I buy? But at the time, I was a little bit more open already to like crazy music, and so it became one of my favorite records. And the crazy thing with that one is it has one of those songs that's in between the grooves of another song. So one day, like my buddy and I are listening to it. We love this record, you know. After some weeks of listening to it, we're like, "Oh, Disco Volante is the best thing ever," you know. And we're like, "Let's listen to this song," you know. And so I take the needle on the record player and I put it to where we know that song is. And I kid you not, a different song comes on, and we're like, we look at each other like, "What the fuck? We've listened to this vinyl like, you know, 20 times. Like, we've never heard this song.
Yeah.
What the fuck?" And that's when we
Yeah.
realized, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you can put like grooves in between another song, and you gotta drop the needle exactly in the right spot to get that bonus track, you know. Which we were like, our minds were completely blown, like it totally worked on us. We were like, oh my god, you know, we'd never heard of this thing. So we're like, telling all our friends, like, you won't believe what happened, you know. But anyway, it's like that's one of the beautiful things that came with vinyl and with like a time before you could, you know, just be like, skip this, skip that, skip this
Yeah.
song. You know, you really get an appreciation for the album as a whole, and also for music that maybe takes some time to grow on you before you really like. Now I get it. You know, sometimes that'll take like 4, 5, 10 listens on some albums. So, and that's something I
It's
still
definitely
do
hard for
today because
bands.
that's how I grew up. But I think, you know, if you grow up in this era, it's, you know,
Hmm.
it's maybe not that evident to. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like it's kind of a throwaway thing, you know, and that's unfortunate. I think if I have any message to, you know, people who are, you know, watching this or listening to this, it's like, you know, when you listen to your music,
Hmm.
like give things a chance, you know. I mean, yeah, sure, sometimes you put something on and you're like, you know, pretty much right away this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff
Yep,
sometimes
for
that
sure. You know, and
just
and
needs
and
some
funny
time to
you
sink
mentioned that,
in
you know, too,
and then
just
you really
because
discover the
there are
magic, you know.
a
So do
ton of
that.
albums that I have that, you know, now love, but at first, you know, you go to the store and you spend that $20 that, you know, your check might have been $30, and that's all that you had is you spend it on a damn, you know, record or whatever. It's like, all right, I bet I have to love this damn thing. I don't have a choice. I spent all my money on it. You know, so I mean, I think going through that, you know, not even as a
Exactly,
musician, you
yeah.
know, and just, you know, wanting people to buy your music,
Exactly,
but,
yeah.
you know, as a thing where, you know, I it's a little frustrating with streaming because I appreciate streaming, but then also, you know, it lets on that availability to hear 5 seconds of a first track and be like, no, I'll just go through the stuff I already have downloaded, you know, kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's it, you know, and I think, you know, it's inevitable, you know. I mean, it's I see it as, you know, I'm not a big fan of like Spotify and stuff. I don't
Yeah.
use Spotify because I think until they pay artists better or that whole system gets figured out, maybe then I'll consider it, you
Hmm.
know. So I'm more like a Bandcamp guy. I love Bandcamp because that's where, you know, artists and labels get like a huge cut of, you know, the way it should be, you know, especially for independent artists. It's a great platform because
Right.
when you sell a song on there, you actually get 80% of the revenue, which is like, that's unheard of in the history of music industry, you know. Like even in the very early days when guys started making like, you know, recording blues singers and pressing them on vinyl and stuff, those guys had shitty deals. So it's like, this is the first time that there's actually a platform where it's like you sell a song, we'll give you 80%. You're the person who made it, you know, you're the
Right.
band who made it. Like you guys deserve this money. And it's like,
Hmm.
finally, thank you, like one platform that respects the way it is, you know. So people should, you can stream, go to Bandcamp, you know, that's the best place for me. But yeah, it's you know, to get back to what you were saying,
Right.
it's inevitably that way, and you can't stop progress, and there's no real sense in like trying to do that. But it's just good that,
Yeah.
you know, people like you and me
Yeah.
can tell younger people how it used to
Right.
be, and
Right.
maybe some of
Right.
them will
Yeah.
be like,
That's, I
oh,
mean,
vinyl, I gotta
it's
check that
certainly a
out, you know,
thing that, you know, there's even albums that you listen to now, you know, through your phone or through streaming. And it's like, man, put that on a record player, put that on a console.
you haven't even heard the damn thing yet.
Totally, man. I agree. The warmth that comes with a vinyl, the natural compression that kind of comes, I mean, it's telling when you know that records are mastered specifically for vinyl, On CD or digital, it's just like everything's maxed out usually. That's usually the approach. And on vinyl, it's a lot more dynamic, and you can really hear, you get more of a sense of being in the room with the band, when you're listening to a record. Plus the whole experience of just, having the big cover and the big lyric insert and, being able to admire all that while you listen to the record. There's nothing like it.
Go over some of your projects that you have going on right now. You have some absolutely incredible stuff. I'm trying to touch on, what I can in a timely process so I don't keep you here all night, because you have some awesome shit going on here. So this is a bit I wanted to call the Verbeuren projects. All right. So the first up, I wanted to talk about Bent C. This bad boy, you've got some absolutely sick features from Midnight at the Gates. How did this come about? And just tell us about, the Instagrind series.
Yeah, so the Instagrind is kind of like a unique thing for Bent C, because I've been working on our full-length album for a while now, for some years, and it's just for various reasons, it's just taking a while to come together. And then this quarantine happened, which further slowed things down, because like Sven from Aborted, who's the vocalist, couldn't go to the studio for a while because of the quarantine in Belgium, etc. So, everything was just slowed down, and I had all these ideas, and I'm sitting here at home, not touring, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to record a bunch of songs, in the meantime, while those guys are working on that and that gets finished, I'm just going to record a bunch of songs and see what happens. And then came the idea of like, why don't I ask, some cool people to jam with me on those songs, like Reinert from Midnight, great dude, good friend of ours, a bunch of different people like that. Thomas from At the Gates, just people I've worked with over the years, people I admire. Some people I have not met personally, like for example, Richard Johnson from Agoraphobic Nosebleed, and from all these different bands, Drugs of Faith. I've never met him in person, but he's a guy that I look up to, that I was in touch with online. So I'm like, hey, you want to sing on a song, And so it just became a thing where I'm like, person, but he's a guy that I look up to, that I was in touch with online. So I'm like, hey, you want to sing on a song, And so it just became a thing where I'm like, I'm going to call it Instagrind. It's just going to be a thing where I release songs whenever they're ready, and it'll be whatever it'll be. So it's kind of like a side thing, for Bent C. So the real album, like the full-length album, is still being worked on, as well as a bunch of extra songs for EPs and splits, kind of like, the grindcore way. But yeah, that's my thing, in Bent C, it's like, it's really my own musical expression, kind of free of any sort of limitations. At least that's the goal. I write all the songs. I usually start on drums. So I'll just record a bunch of crazy drums, and I take those, I put guitar over them and like scratch bass, whatever. I write all the lyrics, I put the whole thing together, and then I send it off to some collaborators. Usually it's Shane from Napalm on bass and Sven from Aborted on vocals. Those are like, the main guys that I work with for most of the stuff. And it's just fun to do, having that creative, like we said earlier, like I was talking about what I tell my students, like having a creative outlet, it's really satisfying and important, and I think it really feeds your soul. So for me, it's something that no matter what I do, to have that and to be able to do that on my own terms without any business pressure, because it's not about, I want to sell records or something. I mean, it's grindcore, so let's be realistic, But I just really do it purely as something that when I feel like I want to express it. So,
but that song is definitely, I mean, that was like the track for me, off of it, that I was like, holy shit. This is where it's at. This is sick. Love it. No, right. I mean,
thanks,
absolutely,
man.
the whole thing is sweet, but that one track,
I love all
and just the title
stuff.
of it, I was like, oh, this is the whole package. This is badass. I love it.
And it's true, right? Nothing does last forever, because eventually you wear out.
On Brave and Bold. So how this project came about, and meeting up with Mitch Harris. Tell us about that.
Well, Napalm Death, as I mentioned earlier, they've been a super important band for me in my life, one of my favorite bands of all time. And Mitch, happened to come to a Soilwork show at some point. He lives in Vegas, and so he came to a show. We talked, and he said, "Hey, I have some music. What do you want to do? Do you want to do something with this? Would you like to work with me on this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So that's how it came about, and it was really fun, organic, just jamming together in the studio. And yeah, because I mean, there wasn't really any plan to play live or anything. It was just let's get these songs. He had all these songs, and he's like, let's just get them recorded, see if we can find a label to put them out, and that's it. It was very simple and straightforward. There was no headaches, and I got to spend some time with one of my,
Yeah.
childhood heroes.
Yeah,
I mean, I've
holy
been a
shit.
fan of Mitch's since like, Harmony Corruption, 1990, 31 years ago. It's crazy.
This just banger of an album comes out, slaps me in the face with every angle of different musicians that I could ever love in one band. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, a super group. This was a fucking super group if I had ever heard one. I think Jacob Bannon was doing an interview and talking about doing a project with Shane and then Dirk from Megadeth, and I'm like, what? Like, holy shit. So tell us about, I know initially it was Shane's thing. He had an album some years ago and then, got in touch with Jacob, but how did you get involved with the project?
Well, so I've been working with Shane on various things. We did the Tornos album. Obviously, he plays in Benty, and we're friends. We're always messaging. We become friends over the years. He's a super sweet guy. Shane is the best, and so he reaches out to me all the time. And one day I'm like, man, I just love that Blood from the Soul album. And he's like, hey man, maybe we can put some songs together. Would you be down? I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm down. So we just started recording some stuff, and over time it just became that. Initially he had asked Lou Collar, who sang on the first, Blood from the Soul from back in '93, but I don't think Lou was really into it or wasn't available, whatever. So he's like, hey, how about we ask Jake? And I'm a huge Converge fan, so I'm like, fuck yeah. Jake was in, and then he got Jesper from Nazem, who on bass, who was also, a legendary guy and a super sweet guy. So yeah, it just kind of all came together, and before you know it, here's a record, and I mean, Shane's a super productive guy. Sure. He has like, he puts everyone else to shame with the amount of bands and projects he's in.
Tell us about, with the original album being, mostly, if not all, industrial drums. Did that kind of inspire your, your approach on how, you wanted to write for this project?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge fan of that record. It's one of those underground gems. Not that many people really know about it, but it had a huge impact on me at the time because it just sounded unique. And I was really at that time, I was fully into discovering, unique things and different things that I didn't know. So I definitely took cues from that, listened back to it a lot, and was kind of like when I was writing my drum parts for the songs, trying to have a little bit of that feel in it, but then at the same time inject like new things,
the album's coming out and, they released, I think Debris of Dreams was the first track that was the initial single, and then you're hearing organic drums and I'm like, oh, fuck, this is going to be absolutely wild. So, yeah, high five on that, man. That was I love that record. Next up, Cadaver. You were together for the EP as well, right? Were you in the project for that?
Yeah, that was actually recorded, Yeah, it was recorded during the album sessions. Those were just, we felt 10 songs was enough for the album. And nice. Initially the EP was going to come out after the album, but then the pandemic happened.
Your interest started with hallucinating anxiety, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this really well. It was one of those times when we would go to the store and buy random stuff like we were talking about earlier. My buddy bought Hallucinating Anxiety on cassette, and we were both like, it's one of those things. Like, what is this thing? Because it had such a different sound. It was death metal, but it just sounded really buzzsaw, kind of weird, And he wasn't too into it. He was like, I don't know. It was like, sorry about that. It was like, maybe you'll like this, why don't you take this cassette home? And so I took it and dubbed it, and I was like, I'm a huge fan, I love this shit. Yeah. This actually happened because I was, Anders played in Satyricon, and I was filling in for them. And, and we just hit it off, We just kind of started talking, and I told him I'm a huge fan. And from there, it was like, let's make some music. Let's do some new stuff. He's like, I have some old demos. Let's work on them. And
where did the writing process go from there? As far as, did you guys link up a couple of times and just hammer out, some few hour sessions? How did that work?
Yeah, one time I was in Norway, and we were able to take like a few hours in the afternoon to go to his studio and bang out some ideas, And actually, the song "Feed the Pigs" came from that, and that became sort of the guideline for the record. When we did that one, we were like, we recorded a rough demo of it, and we're like, this is great, like, let's kind of follow this track. And then the rest kind of just roll out naturally. And, we'd send stuff back and forth, and then Anders came here, and we jammed and recorded the album. And we played together in the studio, so it was very, like, organic, the whole...
Now, I don't want to be mistaken here. That's you on the cover, right? Okay, so I was, before I even read a couple of things that might have been kind of conflicting, and I was like, I'm going to have to ask, because I'm not quite sure. I know your wife did the photography for the album, correct?
Yes, yes. My wife Hannah, she's an
Yeah.
incredible photographer, and obviously I work with her whenever I get a chance. She's done all the Ben C covers too. But since we were here and we were recording here, and we're like, of course we got to do some pictures. So we set up this really cool thing with our friend Melissa Stell from Custom Art, who provided like a lot of the props and stuff. And Hannah was like, let's do a really cool creative thing with weird lighting. And Anders and I were totally into it. And yeah, it was so good in the end. They were like, let's use this as the cover. Initially, they were just supposed to be like band shots, like let's see what we'll do with this,
Yeah,
But
for
then
sure.
over time, we're like, why would we have a cover when we have this? This is just killer. So
It's so beautifully vibrant, but the longer you stare at it, you're like, man, this is some grim shit going on. Dear Lord. That's sick.
yeah, I mean, we really wanted to embrace that whole
Yeah.
vibe, because it is a death metal band. It's old school, and it's supposed to
Yeah.
kind of scare people a little bit and piss people off, and that's what it was about when I was a kid. And that's, I'm sure for you, the same thing, and so I want to keep that spirit alive, I
Like
don't.
late 80s, early 90s, and seeing that logo and it's so like scratchy and dirty, and then seeing it on this all new 2020, 2021 album, like, man, these guys are still kicking it. They're still doing it, That's it. And it's just as gritty as ever.
Exactly, yeah. That grit is what it's all about for me. It's something that I listen to all kinds of different music, so I'm not like exclusive of things. But when it comes to death metal and grindcore and stuff, for me, when it's gritty and it has attitude, dirt, just nastiness, to me that's a part of it. When it's too clean and too properly
Yeah,
produced and
for
stuff,
sure.
sometimes it can be good. I'm not saying it's always bad, but a lot of times for
Yeah.
me it takes away something.
All right, last up, we have to dig into Megadeth. If you guys were coming together and you were writing up the set list for the next tour that you get to start up here, and if each of you got to throw in 3 songs, any 3 songs from the whole catalog that you wanted, what 3 songs would you put in the set list? Yes.
Oh man, that's a no-brainer. Like definitely Black Friday, which I've already been, pushing for, So hopefully I can make that happen one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably be like something like "Killing Is My Business," the song, the title track, which
Right.
is a great track, and probably like "Bad Omen" or something like that. I mean, I fell in love with Megadeth for Peace Sells, so for me,
Sure.
really, like the way I feel Megadeth the deepest is the early stuff. That includes
Mm-hmm.
"Rust in Peace" too, even "Countdown," I would say, and
Nice,
"Euthanasia."
nice.
I was definitely surreal, I was definitely pinching myself. I still do, to be honest, because.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a very fortunate guy to be doing what I do. So, I don't take any
Right.
of that stuff for granted. And as we all see now with what's happening in the world, you can't. So exactly.
Tell us as far as what was your approach to the new material, writing and recording both?
Well, we spent a lot of time working on the songs together, which I really loved. I was really great to be a part of that, and for Dave to allow everybody in and to kind of for it to be a group effort, even though he wrote a lot of material, but it was developed as a band, and he really valued my input, my drum ideas and stuff. And I just wanted to give Megadeth what Megadeth needs. There was a lot of talk about like, oh, are you gonna play like death metal and blast beats and stuff?
Right.
And I was like, look, I'll see. In the end, I'm going to give the songs what they need, and I'm going to respect the legacy of the band. I got 4 years almost, to tour, to learn all the Gar Samuels and stuff, all the Nick Menza stuff, some of the obviously later stuff too. But, for me, it was like really important to have that be a part of it,
Yeah.
and at the same time inject my own kind of touch to it. Dave was super encouraging of me trying things, and so I did. And so, I some of the stuff ended up being recorded when we recorded the album. So yeah, there's definitely some of me in there, which, I didn't know going into there if that was going to work or if it was, if he was going to be cool with that, and he was
Sweet.
totally stoked.
Kind of overall band writing experience, like you had mentioned. And with your guitar playing, did you supply any riffs? Did you come in with any sort of guitar playing at all?
I did. Yeah, I actually, he asked us all to contribute things, and so I wrote a couple of songs, and one of them we recorded. Dave
Yeah,
took the
right,
guitar
right.
parts and actually made them a lot
Yeah.
cooler. He's a way better guitar player than I am, and I mean, he's fucking Dave Mustaine, right? So it's like, I can't touch that. But he took the basic idea that I had and kind of what I had laid out and worked on that and reworked it in his
Yeah.
own way, made it like, a lot better. And so that song ended up being
Yeah,
recorded, and
right.
it's really exciting for that to have happened. For me, it's like, wow, another pinch me moment. And then I wrote some other riffs too, and one of those I also ended up in a song.
Do you
So
have anything that you're, overly, most excited about with this new record?
I mean, honestly, I think the greatest thing about it is that it
Nice.
was a group effort and
Nice.
that it really touched upon different eras of the band as far as, the elements that constitute the songs. As far as what's going to be on the album, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I haven't heard anything since, 6, 7 months I was there to record together with David. We laid down the rhythm tracks. I haven't really heard anything since then, so I don't know what's happened and what's going to end up on the
Yeah,
album and
right.
what's not,
Right.
etc.
Hearing that it's the overall process and it's the overall album, I think that's a bigger selling point for longtime fans to, know that some sweet shit is coming. That's awesome.
I think fans are going to be stoked. That's all I'm going to say. I think people are really going to be blown away by this record when it comes out. And as far as my perspective, being a part of it, for it to be something we did together, something where we were all able to add
Hell
little
yeah.
things and
Wow,
express ourselves,
that's
to me,
awesome.
that was
Great
super
news,
cool.
man. This has been absolutely amazing. We've gone over our time that I even requested of you, but you've been so cool and so humble. I really appreciate your time. Like I mentioned before, thank you very, very much. This has been sick. This is your time, my man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. It's really been a huge pleasure talking to you. Great conversation. Really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always doing drum lessons. I have a bunch of students, so I'm always open to, if anybody's interested in taking lessons, you can reach out to me, via my website, dirkverbeuren.com. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. On Instagram, you can message me too if you prefer to do that. That's one thing that I always do, and I love teaching drums. Uh, all ages.
Nice.
Doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be like experienced or whatever. I don't really mind if you don't know that much. I'm happy to help and pass on some of what I've learned. I'm obviously recording. I have my studio, so I'm always doing session work for people whenever I get a chance to, be a part of something cool and contribute some drums. And of course, lots of NC coming. Lots of other projects that are in the works right now that I can't talk about yet. But
Right. In my research of you and coming up with something that would be kind of silly but then practical. So what I came up with was a finale that I like to call drumming through the genres. So let's say in 2022 that you got to book a music festival. Concerts came back and there was different things, festivals going on. You got to book a music festival. There's going to be 4 headlining bands of different genres where you get to play drums for every band. All right? So, first off, for the following genres, I want to ask what band you would love to play drums
nice.
with for one show. All right? One concert. So, first off, I want to ask you one metal band. What would you love to play? What band would you love to play drums with?
I got to go with Napalm Death on
I
that
never
one.
have before, and man, that'd be great.
They're just so awesome. But I don't think
Nice,
I could do it. Maybe
right,
I think they have such a unique sound that
rock,
I would probably ruin
rock
it.
and roll, maybe some 70s. What band would you love to play with? It's gonna be some hard hitting, but man, if they were to hire anybody
Zeppelin.
else, you're the dude. And now next up, a punk band. What band would you
Thank
have?
you. I don't know about that, but it would be an honor for sure.
Nice. Holy shit! Not a thought behind
Oh
it.
man,
That was just ready
Dead
to
Kennedys
jump
with
on it.
Jello
Man,
Biafra,
this would be a sick
right
festival.
away.
I hope somebody's listening to
My
this shit and
favorite.
can make it happen.
No.
All right, now last up, I wanted to ask you, with you mentioning the old Beastie Boys, a hip hop group. What hip hop group would you love to stand in and play some drums for them?
Oh my gosh. Well, it would be them probably. They're still one of my favorites.
Man.
But hey, Public Enemy sometimes has had a real drummer, so I'd be down to do that too. I respect them a lot.
Yes.
So yeah,
All right,
any
man,
one of those
that
two.
wraps everything
Run
up.
DMC.
Like I say,
Yeah,
thank you
I'm down
so
for all of
much.
that.
You've been absolutely amazing. This has been such a great conversation, and very, very cool. Thank you so much once again, man.
Thank you.
All right, you take care. The Lo-Fi Whore Guy, Dirk Verbeuren.
Thanks for having me, man.
You
My
guys
phone's
take care.
about to
Stay
die,
safe.
but
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.